The metaverse was supposed to be the next internet. A new digital frontier. A new economy. A new way to live, work, and socialize. For a brief moment, it felt inevitable. Billions were invested. Corporate strategies were rewritten. Virtual land was sold. Headsets were marketed as necessities. Every major tech narrative pointed in the same direction. The future was immersive. The future was virtual. The future was the metaverse. Then something strange happened. People stopped showing up. Not dramatically. Not overnight. Quietly. User numbers plateaued. Engagement fell. Corporate enthusiasm faded. Projects were delayed or shut down. From the outside, it looked like a normal tech slowdown. But beneath the surface, something deeper was breaking. Because the metaverse was not just a product. It was a promise. A promise that technology could create an entirely new world. A promise that digital economies could replace physical ones. A promise that companies could monetize human attention forever. When that promise started to collapse, it exposed something uncomfortable. Not about virtual reality. Not about headsets. Not about graphics. But about how modern tech bubbles actually work. This documentary is not about mocking the metaverse. It is about explaining how the metaverse boom formed, why it attracted so much money, why it is now collapsing, who benefited from the hype, who lost capital, and what this failure reveals about the future of technology speculation. Because the metaverse is not an isolated story. It is a pattern. A pattern that keeps repeating across the tech industry. And each time it repeats, the consequences get larger. How the metaverse boom started. To understand why the metaverse is collapsing, we have to understand why it exploded in the first place. The metaverse did not appear out of nowhere. It emerged from three converging forces. Technological maturity. Investor desperation. Corporate narrative control. For years, virtual reality had existed on the margins. Headsets were bulky. Graphics were limited. Content was scarce. But over time, the technology improved. Displays became sharper. Processing power increased. Hardware became cheaper. At the same time, the tech industry faced a problem. Growth was slowing. Social media platforms were saturated. Smartphone markets were mature. Advertising growth was flattening. Investors were searching for the next big thing. Something that could justify massive new capital inflows. The metaverse became that story. It offered everything investors wanted. A massive total addressable market. Endless monetization potential. A new hardware cycle. A new digital economy. It also offered something else. An escape from regulatory pressure. As governments began scrutinizing existing tech platforms, companies needed a new narrative. A future vision. Something that shifted attention away from current problems. The metaverse provided that distraction. Corporate leaders began framing it as inevitable. Not optional. Not experimental. Inevitable. They spoke about digital worlds replacing offices. Virtual meetings replacing travel. Digital goods replacing physical ones. Virtual property replacing real estate. This narrative spread quickly. Because it served everyone's interests. Companies could raise capital. Investors could speculate. Media could generate headlines. Governments could avoid regulation. A massive hype cycle formed. Money flooded in. Startups launched overnight. Virtual lands sold for millions. Headset production scaled up. Corporate strategies were rewritten around immersive worlds. None of this required proof of demand. It only required belief. This is how bubbles always form. Not from evidence. From stories. Stories about the future. Stories about inevitability. Stories about missing out. Another factor amplified the boom. Pandemic-era isolation. People were spending more time online. Remote work normalized digital interaction. Video calls became daily life. This made the idea of virtual worlds feel more plausible. If people could work through screens, why not through avatars? If meetings could happen in boxes, why not in virtual rooms? The metaverse narrative fit perfectly into this psychological moment. It felt like a logical next step. Investors saw this and accelerated funding. They poured money into anything labeled immersive, virtual, or metaverse. Valuations exploded. Companies with no revenue reached billion-dollar market caps. Because the assumption was not about current profitability. It was about future dominance. Whoever controlled the metaverse would control the next internet. This belief justified almost any price. Another layer of hype came from speculative markets. Virtual land became a new asset class. People bought digital plots not to use them, but to flip them. This is a classic bubble behavior. Assets rise in price not because of utility, but because people expect prices to rise, which attracts more buyers, which pushes prices up further, which reinforces the belief, until reality intervenes. This entire boom was driven by expectations, not usage. And that is why it was fragile from the start. Why nobody actually used it? For a technology that was supposed to replace the internet, the metaverse had a simple problem. People did not want to be there. Not because they did not understand it. Not because it was too early. But because it did not solve a real problem. The first barrier was friction. Using the metaverse required expensive hardware, bulky headsets, powerful computers, complex software setups. This immediately limited adoption. Most people already had smartphones. Most people already had laptops. Most people already had social media. The metaverse asked them to buy new equipment to do things they could already do more easily. This violated a basic rule of technology adoption. New tools must be dramatically better than existing ones. The metaverse was not. The second barrier was discomfort. Virtual reality is physically exhausting. Headsets are heavy. Motion sickness is common. Eye strain is real. Extended sessions are unpleasant. This made it unsuitable for daily use. People do not want to wear a device on their face for hours. Especially not for work meetings or socializing. The third barrier was social awkwardness. Avatars did not feel natural. Facial expressions were limited. Body language was inaccurate. Conversations felt artificial. Instead of feeling immersive, interactions felt strange. People felt disconnected rather than connected. This undermined the entire promise of social presence. The fourth barrier was lack of content. Most metaverse worlds were empty. There was nothing to do. No compelling games. No meaningful social experiences. No productive tools. People logged in once out of curiosity. Then never came back. Because novelty wears off quickly. Utility does not. The fifth barrier was economic mismatch. The metaverse was marketed as a mass consumer product. But it was priced like a luxury toy. Headsets were expensive. Virtual land was expensive. Digital goods were expensive. This excluded most people. And those who could afford it often did not see the value. Another problem was fragmentation. There was not one metaverse. There were dozens. Each with its own platform. Its own rules. Its own economy. Its own avatars. Nothing was interoperable. You could not carry your identity or assets across worlds. This destroyed network effects. Instead of one massive digital city, users got dozens of empty towns. This made every platform feel dead. Another deeper issue was psychological resistance. People already felt overwhelmed by screens. They already felt addicted to devices. They already felt socially isolated. The idea of escaping further into virtual worlds did not feel appealing. It felt dystopian. Instead of promising freedom, the metaverse symbolized entrapment. This cultural resistance mattered. Because technology adoption is emotional, not rational. People do not use tools just because they exist. They use tools that align with their desires and values. The metaverse did not. The final barrier was productivity failure. For work, the metaverse was worse than existing tools. Virtual meetings were slower. Collaboration was clumsier. Information sharing was harder. There was no efficiency gain, which meant companies had no reason to adopt it. This killed the enterprise use case. Without enterprise adoption, the metaverse lost its most profitable market. All of these problems were visible early. But they were ignored. Because money was flowing. And when money flows, reality is postponed. Who profited and who got trapped? Every tech bubble follows the same structure. A story attracts capital. Early insiders profit. Late participants lose. The metaverse was no different. The biggest winners were tech corporations. They raised massive funding. They boosted stock prices. They generated media attention. They justified layoffs and restructurings. They used the metaverse narrative to reposition themselves as future-focused. This bought them time. Time to deal with slowing growth. Time to manage regulatory pressure. Time to restructure their business models. Another group that profited were venture investors. They invested early. They exited during peak hype. They sold stakes at inflated valuations. This is how speculative cycles work. Those who control timing win. Those who arrive late lose. Another group that profited were hardware manufacturers. They sold headsets. They sold accessories. They sold development kits. They benefited from early demand. But this demand was temporary. Once user growth stalled, sales collapsed, which left them with excess inventory and shrinking margins. The biggest losers were retail investors. They bought stocks at peak prices. They invested in startups with no revenue. They bought virtual land at absurd valuations. They believed the hype. Because everyone else did. This is how bubbles trap ordinary people. Not through fraud. Through optimism. Another group that suffered were developers. They quit stable jobs to build metaverse startups. They spent years creating content that nobody used. They burned through savings. They lost careers. Because they trusted the narrative. Another group affected were users. They bought expensive headsets. They bought digital assets. They invested time learning platforms. Then watched everything collapse. They were left with useless hardware and worthless digital goods. This destroyed trust. Not just in the metaverse, but in tech promises in general. Another consequence was capital misallocation. Billions of dollars went into metaverse projects instead of productive investments. Instead of infrastructure, healthcare, energy, education. Money was wasted on digital illusions. This slowed real economic growth, which hurt everyone. The final group that paid the price were workers inside tech companies. When the bubble burst, layoffs followed. Entire divisions were shut down. Careers were destroyed. Because executives chased hype instead of building sustainable businesses. This is the hidden cost of tech bubbles. They do not just destroy capital. They destroy lives. What the metaverse failure really means. The collapse of the metaverse is not just a story about virtual reality. It is a story about how modern capitalism works. Specifically, how speculation distorts innovation. The metaverse failed because it was built to satisfy investors, not users. It was designed to generate hype, not utility. It was optimized for valuations, not adoption. This is not a technology problem. It is an incentive problem. In modern markets, companies are rewarded for growth narratives, not for sustainable value creation. This pushes them to chase trends, even when those trends make no sense. The metaverse was a perfect example. It combined futurism, immersion, digital ownership, new economies. It sounded revolutionary, which made it irresistible to investors. But none of it was ready. None of it was needed. None of it was wanted. Another lesson is about timing. Technologies often fail not because they are impossible, but because they are premature. The metaverse may exist one day, but launching it before demand exists is a recipe for failure. The final lesson is about trust. Each tech bubble erodes public trust. People become more cynical. They stop believing in innovation. They resist future technologies. This slows real progress, because scams and hype poison the environment for genuine breakthroughs. The metaverse crisis reveals a deeper problem. The tech industry is no longer driven by solving problems. It is driven by financial engineering. And when finance dominates innovation, bubbles become inevitable. The metaverse was never really about technology. It was about belief. Belief that the future could be packaged. Belief that digital worlds could replace physical ones. Belief that speculation could replace value creation. When that belief collapsed, so did the bubble. This does not mean virtual reality is dead. It means hype is. And that is a healthy correction. Because innovation without utility is just illusion. If you want to understand how money, power, and technology are quietly reshaping the world, subscribe to this channel. Each week, we break down the systems behind the headlines. Not with hype. Not with mockery. But with calm, long-form explanations. The next episode explores another hidden shift already changing the economy. Because the most important transformations rarely announce themselves. They simply happen.